Start with questions for our candidates on their presentations and/or go from there. Gloria. I'll just keep the stack, and then you guys.
My voice is kind of gone, so. When I ran for city council, I found something I learned. The June election is different from a November election because in November, daylight savings time hits you in the last days of the campaign, and suddenly you realize that you're not going to get your precinct walking done. And that was my only campaign, so it was a new learning experience for me. And I'd like to know about that in Alaska.
Campaigning in the state of Alaska has a lot of peculiarities. I've been standing in front of post offices at 5 degrees above zero for maybe 6 or 8 hours, shaking hands with people. Unfortunately, all our elections happen in the fall, and that's pretty much the way it is. You dress for the weather, you wear insulated boots, you wear gloves, you wear hats, you wear jackets, just like everyone else. My particular community is in a northern maritime rainforest in Prince William Sound. We receive approximately 200 inches of rain per year.
They know we're here.
So basically you just deal with the environment the best you can. I don't know if that's answered your question or not.
Yeah, just quickly, Carolyn wanted to point out that we have the opposite problem in Arizona. It's over 100 degrees in the summer, so we have to deal with that.
I have a question for the candidates about how you felt about doing media advertising. In our platform, in Hawaii, we had a very idealistic statement about how we wanted to ban media advertising and run campaigns on the issues in public forums and stuff. And we ended up having candidates who were on radio time and finding that radio time was cheap and it was very effective. And at that point we were saying, well, this maybe isn't quite cool, but it's working, so we'll do it. And we had some funny feelings about that. I mean, how much do you go ahead and play by the usual rules, and how much do you insist on purity even if you shoot yourself in the foot? And I'd like to hear from the candidates about that.
You don't like newspapers, huh? No, you did like newspapers, but you didn't like radio? Is that it?
No, in the platform it says, to ban all media advertising.
You don't like newspapers?
Paid advertising. And we may have to drop that because I don't think we can enforce it.
Well, I don't know exactly why you think the media is unworthy of your campaign dollars. I mean, I wasn't in on the decision for that. But as someone who works in the media, I think, personally, I think my job is to try to get information out to people. I mean, that's kind of like why I do it. And maybe that's not true for everybody in the media. But, I mean, when I sit down at my desk and I report on news, I want to let people know what's going on.
It's not reporting news.
I know. And all advertising is, whether it's for your business or for a candidate, is your freedom of speech to get something that maybe we wouldn't write just the way you wanted it. Your freedom of speech to put it in the way you want it, and it can be for any subject. We have developers that put in ads saying this is our side of the story of why this golf course should go into this open space, because they know that the coverage and the letters to the editor and stuff are all swayed the other way and may even have false information. So I see advertising as part of the freedom of speech process, and I don't know exactly why that would be inherently evil. So that's one response. I'm not exactly sure why media advertising is evil. If it's done in the spirit of getting the message out to people, I think that's fine. And the second response is that I think you need to look at how to get your message out. In some areas, I think radio would be a waste of time because the area that the radio covers may be way bigger than the district. Or it might be just the opposite. If you're up in Kent Smith's district, maybe radio is the only way some people are ever going to hear what you have to say because you physically can't go to their door. It's 8 counties wide. So I wouldn't necessarily rule out media advertising as an evil.
I'll respond to that briefly by saying it depends. When I ran my successful campaign for mayor of my community, it was very small, and no media advertising was required. Everybody knows me in my town. They voted for me not because I was a Green, but because they know and respect me as an individual. However, when I ran for the State House of Representatives, my House district is approximately the size of Indiana. I live in a community that has no road. To leave my community and get to the rest of my district, I have to take either a ferry boat or fly. Being so large, it's necessary to be able to reach people. You will not be elected if they don't know your name, if they don't understand your platform, if you can't get to them. Now, perhaps you can do that through mailings. That's certainly a part of the puzzle as far as getting your name and your message out. But I found that media advertising was very important. No one who didn't know me or know my name would not check that name in on the ballot.
Karen, I have a question. What exactly did it say in our platform? Because I don't remember that being against ad.
We would work to ban paid political advertising. And the idea behind that was that as it stands, the way political campaigns are run, the folks with the biggest pocketbooks can buy the most advertising and sort of steamroller everybody else because they've got more dollars. And we felt we wanted to level the playing field to give the people with less money a bigger chance.
I get the essence of it, yeah. Everything we do is an advertisement in terms of our, you know, our campaign. I mean, we're out there advertising ourselves, whether we make a T-shirt, whether we're using a different kind of media, whether it's TV or radio, or a microphone, or the newspaper, or your mailings, or bumper stickers, or walking on the streets and showing your body and picking up rubbish and having your name on your garbage bag. Or these are all media techniques, and if you're going to write papers and try to distribute them, that's also media technique. I believe in using the media. I'm an artist. That's my profession. It's not about using the media. It's about how you use the media and what you're saying while you're using it. So I decided to run a campaign. The first decision I made was, am I going to run this campaign to win, or am I going to run to maybe win and run a strongly issue-oriented campaign? And I decided I'm going to run this campaign to win, and therefore I have to use the media. And my issues will come through on a grassroots basis more than through the media campaign, because I want to reach a lot broader population through the media campaign, and that's what I decided consciously. There's no formula, by the way. I'm not telling you this because it's going to work in everybody's place, but because, as you know, in Hawaii, a district can change, and the context is really important. I mean, what kind of campaign you run in my district won't work in the district borderlining me. It just won't work. It's not the same kind of thing. Yeah, Linda.
Issue of whether you get your message out and whether you use the media. It's how you access that time to put your message out and how you inform people.
What do you mean? How much time you spend, or how much money you give the radio?
How much money you spend. And the issue is that as long as we permit private funds to come into the process, and as long as the person who has the most bucks can buy the most access to the voters, it's going to work against grassroots candidates. Now, what we say is that we still need the access, we still need the exposure, we need the messages, we need the graphics, we need all of that, but we need public financing for that. And it needs to be across the board so that the person with the most dollars doesn't have that extraordinary advantage. And I think that the whole issue of cleaning up the way campaign spending is accomplished and contributions are accepted really has to be reformed. I mean, that's so basic to making it for the Greens that I think we all need to understand what the underlying issues are. Yeah?
I agree with you. We do reform in the campaign spending laws, but the reality is that we don't have those reform laws right now, so we're going to have to deal with our conditions as they are, as the game plan is set out.
Okay, we got the good old green stack here. We're just gonna go counterclockwise. Hank, Ronnie, Heather, Chris, and Scott.
Well, part of the reason for telling you about what we're doing in the East Bay is we didn't run partisan candidates, but I want people to know that we're using the party as a vehicle to bring people together to continue the movement style of work, doing direct action and all that stuff. I want to know how much of that went on, or if everything stopped so that you could run, and all the, because green locals aren't that big. They have 10 or 20 or 30 core candidates, and we're a little worried that, you know, during the campaign season, all the direct action and lobbying and political action, other movement type actions might take a second place. So, you know, does anybody want to talk about that?
I'll speak briefly to that. In the state of Alaska, we have, although it's not confrontational, a separation between the Greens USA and the Green Party of Alaska. The main focus of the Green Party of Alaska is electoral politics. And when you enter electoral politics, you're tacitly implying that you wish to win elections. So that has always been our major focus in the Green Party of Alaska. Now, some of us are also members of Greens USA, and those people continued in their other activist activities. But primarily, we're straight ahead electoral politics, and that's our main reason to be, is to get people elected. So it was not too much of a problem for us.
Now for a different view.
Yeah, actually, I mean, I think that the questioner is really right. When you do deal with electoral politics, you definitely take some energy away from what else is going on. And that is a choice that you gotta deal with. And that's what I was talking about when you're trying to say, what are you going to accomplish? Could you accomplish something different with those resources? On the other hand, I think to a large extent, there are people who are interested in the Greens as a political party who aren't necessarily as interested in it as a movement, or they are, but their focus is on electoral politics. And basically, that's what they're going to do. And if they're not going to do electoral politics, chances are they might not be doing much of anything else there. So they're not there, in a certain sense, aren't taking that much energy away. And I think that's basically how you have to approach it. People, you just got to let people deal with making the green vision come true whatever way they feel comfortable doing it, as long as they adhere to the green process and doing it in a green way. And I think the people in the movement, like what we have, I think it's good to cooperate with that effort. I mean, you don't have to necessarily drop everything else you're doing and get involved in politics. But there are certainly things that you can do without taking too much energy and going too far out of your way that can help a candidate. And in those areas, I think that would be really good to have them work together and do that.
Ronnie, you got Ronnie, Heather, Chris, Scott, and a 1-minute comment on that.
One of the things we find is that movement activity, politicians pay a lot more attention when they think there's a candidate coming online, or there is in fact a candidate. So I think this dichotomy is really an artifact. It's very Cartesian. I mean, yeah, there's a moment where you got to do something or something else, but it's not a separation.
So instead of just going back to the November elections, we're going back to the 17th century. Descartes?
Yes. Paradise.
I want to throw in a couple cents about this movement party thing. I've already mentioned that we try to put it all together in San Diego. But maybe one of the, I guess to me it seems like the movement is, in the big picture, people who are outside the system. And the electoral thing is people, getting people inside the system. And the question is how do you get social change best with people being outside and people being inside? And I think the reason we formed the Green Party is that we were tired of being on the outside all the time. And we'd like to have some people on the inside. And so what we want to do, in fact what we now are doing, because we are one of the few counties that have 7 green office holders, is that we are doing things from the outside and the inside, and we're all on the same team.
When I was a young girl, about 17, 18, a lot of developers were coming onto our island and starting to propose outrageous things to do to our shorelines and our beaches and certain areas that were sacred to Hawaiians, and starting to build resort hotels and golf courses to to the point where you couldn't believe what they had in mind for it. And it's become a reality, all the plans they had when I was a young girl. And I used to spend a lot of my time down at the county council testifying on why they shouldn't be doing this, the cultural impacts of these developments, the environmental impacts on these developments, the archaeological impacts, and all the reasons why you shouldn't do this. And you'd stay there for hours and you plan protest and march, and you do a lot of active things that should be done because it raises consciousness of the people and more people get involved, and eventually maybe there's some change in consciousness. But I'm at the point now where I feel like it's time we go and be those people that you've been talking to all these years, because no matter how much you talk to them, there's a tendency for them to do whatever they want to do anyway. And in Hawaii, they've managed to do that. And in the broad aspect of Hawaii's plan right now, we don't have much time. They spent the 60s paving over Oahu. They spent the 70s and 80s paving over Maui and Kauai. And my island's left, and I don't have much time, so I can't waste a lot of time sitting around talking about ideology anymore. I got to go over there and try to work myself into the system and fuck them over.
Tomorrow we can certainly get further into the blend of green strategies. I'd like to try and have us focus in on what we can learn from our candidacies after Keiko has kicked butt like that. So let's go. We have Ronnie, Heather, Chris, Scott, Sue, Roger.
To respond to the first part of the discussion about campaign finance reform, at our convention in Anchorage in September, we recognized the need for legislation leveling out the playing field, not banning media, but getting more free access on TV and radio and newspapers. Three of us, I guess, are presently investigating that in terms of the election laws and also constitutional mandates in terms of, advertising as a commodity, and can you restrict that, and can blah, 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 on and on. And are hoping to get someone that's in the legislature now, in the Alaska State Legislature, to sponsor a measure. We're also looking into the idea of doing a ballot initiative, which are not that difficult to do in Alaska. So we are addressing that, and we'll be reporting back to the convention in Juneau in April when we meet again. And then to address the second part of the issue about what happens in a Green Party group. Our bioregional groups, I can speak for mine only, which is the Tanana Yukon Caucus. We have 400 members, but I would say maybe 30 people, 20 people attend meetings with any kind of regularity. And so we do have limited energy in terms of people that you can always count on to come out and do things. And we recognized we had candidates running. We had U.S. Congress congressional candidates. We also had a fellow running for state senate. And then part of Kelley's district is in our bioregion, and the part of his district that was in our bioregion is in an unorganized part of our bioregion. And so we wanted to help all these candidates, and also our borough assembly candidates. What we do is we meet twice a month, and one meeting is a steering meeting, and then one meeting is the general meeting, and people can come to whatever they want. We just call it a steering meeting because it's a business-type planning meeting. During the election season, obviously, we concentrated on these candidates and on these races. Now that the election season is past, we're concentrating more on, if you want to call it movement stuff, but also keeping in mind the idea of grooming candidates, identifying people, encouraging people within the group to run for the municipal elections that will be in the fall, because it's sort of a constant process. But as much as we're real involved in elections and election reform and what's going on in the state legislature, monitoring those things, going to teleconferences, we're also working on clear cutting in the Tanana Valley Forest and 10 other issues. It just really depends on the energy that your group has. But we've structured ourselves to be integrated throughout, and I think it's real important, even if you have a small amount of energy in terms of people that always show up, to integrate what's going on. And people recognize that about us now, and that really has drawn in a lot of members. So it is possible to do with a small group.
Maybe we'll make the first time, introduce yourself and where you're from.
Heather Stone in LA. This is for Steve. I wanted to ask about when your group ran a race against when the campaign committee put forward Barbara to run for the school district. Can you summarize really quickly what the issues were that you set forward and how did that dynamic with the officials work out? And
Okay.
she's got most of the votes, right?
Yeah. Well, let me just clarify. Barbara was appointed to the school board when a vacancy occurred. And there are 5 people on the school board, and when the vacancy occurred, 2 people were from the Christian right and 2 people were not. And so their rules say they have to find someone they can both agree on to fill the vacancy. Good luck. So they couldn't agree on anybody. And it's one of these days they agree on some PTA activist named Barbara Carr, and they put her in there, and the newspaper did a story saying, here's this woman that everyone can work with. And then one of the reporters finds out she's a Green, and that's big news to him, so he puts it in his story that she's a Green. And we're going, oh, she's a Green. We got a Green on the school board. That was easy. So, and so that's how Barbara came in. And she registered at Earth Day somewhere, and without any help from us, became a school board member. And so, of course, you know, the control Greens are like, okay, is she really Green? Let's go meet with her and find out. And so we did. And what do you know? She is like really Green. And she didn't need any help from us. She didn't come to any of our meetings, read any of our books. I don't know what happened. So we said, well, Barbara, you know, you're going to have to run now if you want to remain in that position. You mean, would you like to work with us now that you know us? And she's like, well, I can't because I've already committed to running with these other 2 PT activists that want to keep the Christian right from getting 3 seats in the next election. So I've already got to work with them. And they're like, please, Barbara, and I explained all that. So we did not go in and have any impact on Barbara's campaign. Now, what happened was, what do you know? Barbara's brochure comes out and it's green. So we took all that stuff and we put it into ours, and we created a 3-candidate tabloid, the one that we went to the apartments with, that had me, that had Barbara, and had Susan Wolf Fleming, who were running for a high school board. And we had 3-candidate thing in there, and I have copies for everybody so you can see. And we put in our little, extracting from her own brochure just what the thing was that was green that we wanted to emphasize.
But what were the school issues that you really wanted to push?
I'll give you the newspaper. I don't have it on the top of my head.
I really appreciate what Jack says, because there are a lot of different goals to running for office. And winning is one of them, educating is another, building the movement is another. And I think that helps clarify this, because Keiko, for instance, you said you made a decision to run to win. And it sounds as if your strategy was exactly what was needed to reach that goal. Another Green candidate might have made a decision to have an educational campaign or a movement building campaign. And I think it's just important to distinguish these 2 levels of decision making. First you decide the goal, then you decide the strategy to reach that goal. So I think that helps remove some of this right or wrong stuff. But I have a question for the people who ran not so publicly as Greens, but who are now in office, because Andres Vargas, our candidate for district attorney, made the same choice. Now that you're in office, are you going to be very public about being Green? Are you going to begin a lot of speeches at the county council or in the mayor's office with, well, as a Green, I believe so-and-so, so that your being in office will now build the movement? Yeah.
That's directed to me.
Yeah.
I don't really have to work at this point to be called the Green person. They came immediately on election night. All the Honolulu radio stations came flying over to our island, not just because of me, because of Jack Davis too. And he ran a similar campaign to myself, except the fact that he had to run island-wide, and that was one thing I left out of my earlier speech. We have a district set up now on my island. It's not like that on every island, but that's one of the only reasons I even attempted this, was the fact that I didn't have to run an island-wide campaign. Now, the media came immediately. They started asking ideological questions immediately, and I started answering them from that night, and I've been doing it ever since. If you want to talk about what's been going on in my life for the last 2.5 months since I entered politics. I have a bag of stuff I dragged along with me to catch up on. We're trying to introduce a Cultural Impact Commission in addition to another, as an additional planning procedure on our island so we can stall developments and have a different point of view looked at on the planning level. And we just wrote a resolution to stop helicopters over National Park. I'm fighting on the developers agreement right now, made it public, put it out, and I've been putting out press releases so the public's more aware of things going on. I'm catching things that probably been going down for years and years the same way, but since there's only been a few people on the council that would even want to bring in the public, a lot of these things have gotten lost, and I'm starting to make them public, you know. So I sort of am where I wanted to be, and that's how I planned it before I started running. So as far as movement, yeah, I'm doing what I think is a good strategy for the movement. It's just a different style. And the thing is, if we're going to truly be in favor of multicultural differences and stylistic differences and all these things, I think I don't have any problem with somebody running a totally educational campaign. I don't have a problem with that. But likewise, they shouldn't have a problem with my strategy to get to an educational process that comes a little bit more far down the road. So, thank you.
Pretty much the same thing happened with me. When I ran my race, I did not run as a Green because it's a nonpartisan race. I was elected mayor of the community of Cordova in Prince William Sound, Alaska. I didn't need to tell anyone in my community what my politics were. They knew what it was. And after I was elected, I didn't have to tell anyone anywhere what my politics were. It was a very similar sort of media thing. I received calls from the British Broadcasting Corporation, from the Tokyo Times. I gave a radio interview on National Public Radio from Washington, D.C. Getting elected as a Green is news currently. I played the whole thing like, oh, shucks. I mean, gosh, I've been on larger college campuses, than my community of 2,500 people. I'm just mayor of Podunksville. What's the big deal? But evidently, it was incredible international news. A friend of mine who is working in Antarctica got the news from National Forces Radio. But beyond that, to answer the second part of your question, even though I did not run as a Green, since I've been elected, I have been able to carry out a Green agenda without speaking as a Green. I see very few politicians, even George Bush, when he makes a speech, he doesn't speak as a Republican. Nor do I think Bill Clinton in his campaign spoke as a Democrat. He spoke as Bill Clinton, his ideas.
See, I guess part of what I'm trying to bring up is that, and both of you, I'm incredibly happy that you got elected, and I'm sure you're going to be doing wonderful things, and it obviously does invigorate all wings of the movement to have people like you in office. At the same time, I think one of the things Greens are trying to do to American politics is get people to think in terms of parties and ideologies and not just individuals. I wish George Bush said as a Republican, because that way probably less people would be Republicans.
I'm trying to show my greenness more through my actions than my words. Prior to entering electoral politics, I was an activist and worked for many years to try and institute recycling in my community, and it was not very effective. After being elected, it was basically waste management was a one-way dead-end street from resource to landfill in my community. After being elected mayor, I can now put items on the agenda, and so long as I can point out the bottom line, which is net, to the council, that it's not just a Save the Planet scheme, but it actually saves money for the community, which can be directed towards other things, parks, school programs, etc. Where before it cost us about $75 a ton to put anything in our bale fill. I pointed out to them, if we separate out the aluminum, we can make $800 a ton and save the $75 that we would have used to put that in there. Oh, they said, well, this sounds like a good idea. Is this what it means to be green? I just kind of nodded my head up and down.
Well, as a self-selected and non-elected conference organizer, I would just, as a green, call in the next two people. Scott, Sue, and Roger, those three people.
My name is Scott Bugenthal. I'm the regional coordinator for the Green Party of California from Santa Cruz County. My question for the candidates is, did any of you take any money from sources other than individuals? For instance, were there any organizations outside of the Greens that contribute to campaigns, any PACs, any companies? And if so, how do you feel about that kind of source for campaign money? Maybe even if you didn't get it, if it had been offered, would you have taken it?
I'm about $8,500 in debt. It's, on the Big Island, everybody gets like all these developer money coming around pretty easily. I checked into all the records of my other council members right now, and everyone except the other woman on the council, myself, didn't take much more than the $200 limit that we have in Hawaii. Somebody did approach a friend, a lawyer friend of mine, and asked them, do you think Keiko will take this money? It was Kapua Helu Development Corporation. They're big in Hawaii. She came to me and asked me, and I said, how much do they want to give me? I was curious. I said, how much are they going to give me? And she goes, oh, you know, like 2,000, 500. Maybe they could split it up and do that thing they do, like for the other council. I said, no thanks. I just wanted to know who else is out there asking about me. But we have a limit in Hawaii, and it's a $200 limit. I talked to Ira and I think Linda after the campaign about that, and Jack was talking to them about that too. We're questioning whether that limit is too low, because for instance, the health food store that helped me out wanted to give a little bit more than $200 of money for the media campaign, and you know that was our rule and stuff. So it was a little hard, and especially when if it's all your money too, it gets tough. You know, it really does get tough. And nobody that I know of that ran on our island was rich enough to pick up the slack. And I don't know about what it's like in California, but right now in Hawaii, we're trying to figure out ways of fundraising before we have to campaign. And it's a really important thing that we start reevaluating the whole fundraising process, I think. Thank you.
Yeah, the answer to the question for me, I believe, is no. I can't recall anybody from any corporations that gave me any money. And the idea that that whether or not I would take if it was offered, I have kind of mixed feelings on that. I mean, it's kind of like, you know, some people talk about infiltrators into the movement. You know, if you have some kind of a infiltrator in health, if they're going to pay for the mailing, you'll let them pay for your mailing or whatever. So there's kind of that attitude with some people. And I guess it would have to be a decision. I think I would go back and just talk with everybody. I mean, I certainly wouldn't make that decision unilaterally. If somebody offered it, I'd talk to the group. And if somebody's willing to support something that's going to help green activities, maybe that's not necessarily a bad idea. And I think, you know, you'd have to obviously, I guess I have confidence in myself that I'm not going to allow somebody to give me money and buy my activities. And to think that, you know, like $240 campaign limit, that somebody can buy me for $240, I think is pretty weird. To me it is. Anyway, I think that's where it's at. It's a really hard decision. I don't think it's something that I feel totally settled, but would certainly accept the consensus of the group I was working with.
Now maybe you can correct me, Californians can correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that in nonpartisan races you cannot take money from a group. And you can only take $250 maximum from any individual. So in nonpartisan races, PACs are not a factor. And the way they get around that is, say a developer wants to give several $1,000s to a campaign. You can only do it in $250 increments. So what they do is bundle. So the developer gives 250, and his wife and his daughter and his cousin and his lawyer and his accountant and everybody, and it adds up to $1,000 or $10,000, but it's in $250 chunks. And you can go through the records, and if you're a reporter like me, you go and you try to find this. Now, the point I think that maybe is relevant to a green campaign is that it doesn't necessarily mean that if you got money that you're bought. Okay, and I think any politician will tell you right away, oh yeah, I'm not bought just because, DuPont gave me $10,000, I'm not bought. I mean, they all say that. And in theory, it's right. I mean, if I want to see somebody elected to office, I want to see you elected to office, and I want to give you $10,000 so you'll promote green values, I should be able to do it. It's a free country. And if that guy wants to promote polluting the river, he can give you $10,000, and then it's up to you to represent the public. But the problem is that even though in theory you're not bought because you got a campaign contribution, the public thinks you are. And that's where it gets kind of sticky, I think, for the Greens, because, like I say, if the devil came up and gave me $250, doesn't mean that I'm going to be a satanic candidate, but people might think so. So I think for our campaign, we had to look and see what we thought would be, if the situation came up, would be a negative impact, and we decided that we would not take any money from developers that were involved in land use issues in unincorporated San Diego County, and that was an important thing. Not that they were going to give it to us, but it was important because the others did, and we could say from our side that we would not, and then leave it there and let the public figure out what that meant.
For myself in the municipal election, it was not a problem because I received no donations. It cost me about $400 to run my municipal campaign to be elected as mayor. However, thank you very much. However, I also ran, and I'll be speaking later today on state campaigning. I raised about $10,000. Most of that came from small donations. However, as Steve pointed out, the problem is not so much whether the money actually buys you, because of course it does not with a candidate who has character. There's the big difference is the one that he alluded to between perception and reality. And unfortunately, perception sometimes carries more weight than reality. And it's a question that all candidates will have to take on themselves, whether or not to accept political action money, and from which political action groups will they accept money for that perception. And I think that's extremely important. For myself, although no oil industry or chemical industry offered me any money, I would probably have been very willing to take it. The unfortunate thing about our campaign, has been pointed out, is that it is little other than an advertising exercise. The candidate who has the most amount of money can get the most advertising time and sell the most product. While I agree with the people from Hawaii that we need to limit the amount of paid political advertising that's done, I think we need to wait until that's done across the board for all political parties. If we limit ourselves as Greens to only no paid political advertising, we're giving ourselves yet another handicap.
Being a person that's been involved in the environmental movement in the 60s, and Keiko and I have been under the same orders. I have some deja vu here, which I'd like to express. In this context, it seems to me that one, our fears of the movement or electoral politics are, I think, more a distortion of view, of perception than real. Because what I hear here are electoral politics that have in the main an intent of grassroots organizing. I mean, they feel grassroots committed to all of us. We're happy about that. And the advantage, I think, of the Green program, we had all this grassroots stuff for 1 year. People ran as independent candidates. I would like to use the word of yours, Rizal Answer, ran here as an independent, big, kind of wonderful outfit for her. And she's up against the big developer. She goes into city council. They begin to work her over. And she's probably one of the worst city council people we have now. So what do we do with that? Well, Green then has to hold on to these people. I think Steve was talked about a really good process about holding on to the candidate. And I just wonder, how that's going to really work. They're going to be people of character, they're going to be people of not so much character. Do we have a way of holding on to that candidate and holding on to the program? So, because the money will come in don't go with money. I mean, we live in an economic system where money is blood. I mean, the gold and whatever. You know, they say where the money is milk or whatever. So I don't think there can be rules, but there has to be process. And I just wonder if anyone has given any idea about recall or mechanisms to hold the candidate or to go with it. I just think that the economic system is restructuring. I think the country is into restructuring. I think you read Robert Wright and you're going to have all your municipal governments restructured because of debt service. And then how are we going to deal with that? And are we going to have people in there that are going to slide along and accommodate and look good? And I don't know. I don't have the answer to that.
That's a good question. A brief comment, and that is, in terms of like what your local does, you know, before we were a party, our local did stuff we called movement because we didn't have a party. And then when we got a party, our local started doing stuff that might be considered party because we had a party. When we had campaigns, then the local started doing stuff that looked like campaigns because we had campaigns. Well, now when you get people elected, the next step is that your local starts organizing around office holders. And I think this is just a natural evolution of what I call a movement party. So when you got someone in office, say we got a Barbara Carr or we got a mayor, I mean, if I lived in his city, I'd be going to every city council meeting. The green local would be sitting in the back seat, in the back row of the city council chambers every week, having our local meeting and listening to the issues and grooving with Kelley in a pub afterwards or something, you know. I mean, this is what we're starting to do now. Say, okay, we got a school board person, we've got a human relations commissioner, and we've got a city clerk. I'm sorry, city clerk. Okay, that's in our La Mesa. We've got some other people in the county. Okay, but in our jurisdiction, we have 3 office holders, 2 elected, 1 appointed. So we're sitting there as a local saying, okay, now what do we do with these office holders? Well, let's start organizing our activities. Let's start going down to these meetings. Let's start meeting with the office holders. Let's start impacting the government directly now that we've got this situation. So I would, if you have office holders, I think that your locals should start to see that maybe your work will take on a different flavor. It'll evolve, and you'll have maybe even greater impact.
The question of accountability after you become an elected official is kind of moot in a way. I mean, everything you do is visible. And it's, as Steve was saying, it's exactly what happens with me. After I chair a city council meeting, I see my friends from the Greens in the back seats of the council chambers, and afterwards we debrief in a bar. And they tell me exactly what I did right and what I did wrong. I find as an elected official, I don't have any problem at all about having people come up to me and tell me what I'm doing wrong. In fact, that's mostly what they do.
Okay, hold on, Raj.
Yeah, there was a lot of discussion about different parts of
Yeah, just maybe quickly. I think in one terms you kind of look at it in terms like you win some, you lose some. I mean, some people are going to go there and have problems. Some people are going to go there and maintain green. We talked about, I know that, I think, I'm not sure this is a consensus decision of our Pima County Green Party, but I know we've talked at various times, if somebody does get elected or gets in a certain public situation as a green and then starts not being green, that we would definitely go public and let people know they weren't. Otherwise, I really agree with what's already been said, is that if somebody gets in office, you better be there supporting them and be there every day with them.
Before we take the last question, I just want to go over a couple of logistic items. The lunch from the caterer is going to be out there at the picnic tables. We've made a little bit extra. If you didn't get lunch as part of your registration fee, you want to just get lunch today at $7. We'll hang out there and around here. Please solicit the tables and buy some books, and we'll come back about, it's 10 after 1 now. It's 1? Okay, we're going to say that we're going to start promptly at 2:15. So let's take the last question then, and then we'll break for lunch.
Yeah, we heard a lot about different methods in campaigning, but no one except Kelley really mentioned anything about mail. So I was kind of wondering about direct mail, and along with that, what sort of access you had to voter registration lists here in LA County. It cost me personally $2,300 to get the Greens because of our system. And by the time we actually had it in a usable format, it was 3 months later. And then also
also sort of in conjunction with that, really what you spent on dollars per voter or generally in your campaign, the size of the electorate? Because, for example, in the district that I withdrew from, the Republican and Democrats spent jointly around $800,000 for the assembly district on their campaigns. So just wondered if you could talk about that.
Again, for me, it was pretty easy. On the local level, there's 2,500 people. About half of them are registered to vote, and again, about half of those actually do vote. It was easy to get the, in fact, it was free to get the voter registration roll from the city clerk. And running as mayor, it was very low budget, and I did do some targeting. I targeted everybody who voted. I actually hand-addressed all the letters and put a note on each one. You know, dear Fred, please vote for me. I need your support on October 3rd, Election Day. However, in the statewide race when I ran for State House, it cost me $10 to get the voter registration rolls. And again, I targeted. But in this case, I didn't write to everyone who was registered to vote, nor did I target just Greens because there weren't that many, or just Democrats because I thought they might be more liberal. I looked at the voting record to see who actually did vote. I didn't send a piece of mail to anyone who had been registered to vote who had not voted, but I did target all the people who had my first priority target were the people who voted in every election for the past 5 years. Those people got letters. The second priority were those who voted in the past 4 years every time, and then 3, and then 2, and then 1, and I didn't send anything to the people who were registered to vote but who did not vote.
Was that only on paper, or were you able to get it electronically, like on a disc or something?
It was only on paper.
In Hawaii, you can get one copy of the voter registration list on paper, and then thereafter I had to pay $10 for each copy. There's a thing called Voter Contact Services it's on Oahu, and they just do this. They just put together all the discs and for mailings, and what else they do? They do label services if you want to have all the voters done on labels for you already. We checked into that, and it was a little bit too expensive. I wanted to do 3 total mailings, and I was doing friend-to-friend cards, which actually were pretty effective. Probably the friend-to-friend cards, which were less money, did a lot more in a way. But we planned a 3-piece mailing. That I forgot to mention that in my initial talk, because that was one of the biggest expenses. I got a bulk mailing stamp, but it was worth it because I did over a certain amount. It's not worth it if you don't do, I think in your area, it probably wouldn't have been worth it to get a bulk mail stamp. They cost a few hundred. Yeah, but I was on another island, and we all debated, all the candidates on our island debated whether we were going to go jointly into a bulk mail stamp, and everybody, we were debating so long, I said, hey, look, I got to do this mailing, so I went out. You can use mine, I said, if you want to use it. I went out, and some people were debating whether to use it at all because of the paper, whether we should be wasting paper, so I did do, we use recycled paper and all that, but cost about, every time I did a mailing, I guess it cost almost, for almost 6,000 constituents, it cost me $1,500 or something, maybe a little more. So that was about half my budget right there. Anyway, we got it on disc, but it took a little searching, and we went through going, hey, you know any candidates that had it from the primary that lost and wanted to just give it to me, and we picked one up for the island. I guess we shared it with Jack, but it was just, we went around begging, basically. And it was great because, we printed our own labels and everything, saved us money. Thanks.
Yeah, just real quick. We did not rely on a lot of mailing, but one of the things that we did that I forgot to mention that might be of interest in terms of fundraising, we made these tabloids, and we did mail some of them. But when we did it, we did like a newspaper, and we sold ads. We sold ads to like the health food store, to a massage therapist, or in fact, in our 3-candidate tabloid in La Mesa, I sold an ad to one of the other candidates for La Mesa City Council that I was sympathetic towards that wasn't a Green. I said, look, here you can get some exposure to all the Greens and people in the apartments and stuff. So she bought an ad, helped pay for our campaign literature. So that's kind of weird. Now, the other thing I was going to mention in terms of mailing is that I kind of publish things because that's my business. Anyway, I'm publishing a newsletter from the California State Green Party Campaigns and Candidates Working Group. And all this is like news about what our working group in the California state level is doing and discussion about, green philosophy, also actual, how-tos and what's happening. Anyway, this is the front page, the one that's coming out next month to all. It's for the members of the committee, anyone else in the California Green Party, statewide delegates that are interested, and anybody else anywhere in the world that wants to know about green campaigns. And this is a $5 subscription if you want this cover page to see what it's like and the address. I have some of them. They may be in that literature pack. So check that out. Check that out for your end of the mailing thing.